Hello everybody, this is Refresh, and I'm here to take a look at the Aura of Courage Commander deck for Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms for Magic the Gathering. According to the back here, it says, Protect and Prevail, choose your commander and overcome both friend and foe in this definitive multiplayer Magic format. Stand tall next to Galia and arm your forces with powerful auras and equipment. With the Paladin's protection on your side, none shall do you harm. For Galia, Kindler of Hope, it says, Galia has sworn a solemn vow to foster the light of joy and love wherever it still flickers in a dark and dangerous world. She delights in song and laughter, in beauty and art, for these things have the power to sustain life and light in times of terror. It contains a deck box, 100 card deck with 17 new cards, 10 double-sided token cards, a life wheel, strategy insert, and reference card. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. Never noticed that it has one of these weird pop-out things before. Here's the deck box. It looks pretty decent for a cheap paper deck box. Here's the deck. We have our life wheel here with some artwork on it. That's nice. And it spins up to 40 on two sides. We have our insert. Looks like a little water got in here and damaged some of the insert here, so I can't fully read the story of Galia, Kindler of Hope. Fortunately, I believe that this is a Dungeons & Dragons character, so you should be able to look up a little bit more of Galia online. It also contains Storvald, Frost Giant Jarl, and Catti-brie of Mithra Hall. I know Catti-brie from the Drizzt books, I believe. And on the back, it tells you a little bit more about the deck. There is just a little bit of strategy here, so that's helpful. It doesn't give you a full-on deck tech, so you'll have to look that up yourself, and it gives you a bit of the commander rules as well. Now let's take a look at the cards. There's also a tip card that gives you the phases and popular Magic formats. And that's what we have inside this deck. I'll go ahead and play this against its peers, and I'll be back to let you know what I think. So I've had the chance to play with this deck a little bit, and here are my thoughts. The deck is very clearly built around Galia, the Kindler of Hope. It is exclusively an aura and equipment deck. And you can see that because there are only a handful of creatures, and pretty much everything else is an aura, equipment, or there are some support cards that are neither auras nor equipment. And I think that makes this deck's focus feel pretty good. So when it's working, it works really well. And because you have Galia as a creature that you can always cast, you're never short on creatures, at least until they've blown up Galia a few times. Now, the problem with the deck and the main weakness is that there are a lot more things to cast on creatures than creatures to actually cast those things on. And some of them are pretty resilient, like, for example, the Fleece Mane Lion, the Paradise Druid. They have defensive capabilities, but there are also a handful of creatures here that are not great targets for the auras and equipment that are on here, and some of them exist here as utility creatures. For example, the Knight of Autumn and the Cold Aisaki and the Acidic Slime all exist here as some kind of utility. But the auras and equipment, obviously, when they are put on these creatures, the creatures become quite vulnerable, and you can get 2 for 1 fairly easily as a result. The other thing about the deck that I feel like is a little bit underwhelming are the Forgotten Realms specific dice rolling cards. So, like Valiant Endeavor, for example, has you roll d6s and then you wrath under a certain number power level of one of the die, and you get knights equal to the other die. And these are very swingy cards that are hard to count on, and so a lot of times I feel like these cards don't feel amazing because you don't know exactly what they're going to do. There are a lot of really strong auras and equipment here, and then there are, your Viridian longbows, and so it's a little bit of a half and half in terms of the general quality of the deck. And I do wish that a few more of the creatures that were included in this had a bit more to do with the actual theme, as well as perhaps putting some other cards that can help improve the resilience of the deck if you are not able to consistently cast Galia because she's been destroyed so many times. The other thing about the deck that I found that was a little disappointing is the secondary commander, Storvald Frost Giant Jarl. This creature doesn't have a whole lot to do with auras, and even though he offers a ward 3 to all of your other creatures, in some sense giving them like a bit of defense against being 2 for 1, the ability that he has in terms of turning other creatures into 7/7s or other creatures into 1/1s, it doesn't really play with what the rest of this deck is trying to do. And so I feel like it's not just a poor commander for this deck, but it's also kind of a poor card for this deck in general. But I do think that even with some of these weaknesses, that this deck plays out pretty well as an auras deck. You just have to make sure that you have enough targets for these equipments and auras in your opening hand, because if you don't, you're going to have to rely on Galia. And I think maybe putting in some equipment that self-generate their own creatures, like the living weapon equipment, might have helped this to some extent, but that is an upgrade that you can make on your own. So an enjoyable one, a good mana base also for a 3-color deck, even if it doesn't have like the best lands for a 3-color deck, makes this a pretty enjoyable deck, and one that can even sneak in some Voltron commander damage wins. So that is my experience with Auras of Courage. If you have some experience with this deck, share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.